I want to read you the first sentence in the first paragraph of this book, The Accidental Superpower by Peter Zehan. On July 1st, 1944, 730 delegates from the 44 Allied nations and their respective colonel outposts convened at Mount Washington Hotel in the ski village of Bretton Woods, New Jersey, with a mission to do nothing less than to decide the fate of the post-World War II. There will be a similar meeting to decide the fate of the world of post-World War III. If you haven't read this book, you must. Go down into the description and you'll find a link to it. A similar meeting will be happening within 3 to 6 months. The purpose of that meeting in 1944 was to make sure that there was never a World War III, to ascertain what caused World War II, who was responsible, what reparations would have to be paid, what restrictions would have to be placed on Germany, Japan, Italy, and how the world was going to operate going forward, plus making sure that World War III never happened. In my life, it was always expected that World War III would be a nuclear war, or there were some who believed it would be a chemical, biological war. They were right. It was a chemical, biological war. The question was it purposeful? Was it accidental? I believe it was accidental. I'm not sure if it was a result of some bats and some animals in a vacated warehouse in a part of the Chinese food supply that caused it, or is it just a coincidence that China's chemical warfare laboratories are located in Wuhan, China? I don't know. I really don't care. But what I do know is there are going to be some ramifications. There is going to be a change in the world order. There is going to be a change in the way countries interact from this point forward and from that meeting forward. I want you to also recognize that you have heard nothing about this meeting from any other YouTuber, from any other blogger, and anywhere else. I can't find anything on it because I honestly believe right now it's only being discussed in the cabinets, in the senates of the legislatures and the corporate boardrooms around the world. They all know this can't happen again. And we have to get down to the bottom as to why it happened. It was not Hitler invading Poland, or it wasn't Japan bombing Hawaii. It was a virus that somehow got into the Chinese population and then was mismanaged and then spread across the world. This can never happen again. So, our leaders are already talking about how are we going to make sure it never happened again. And as I say, they will meet. What you and I need to know as investors is how is this going to affect the investment community? How is it going to affect the investment community that all this money has come into the financial system, which should create outrageous inflation, but it has not and probably won't? And how are the currencies of the world going to balance in accordance with the amount and the ways that the various countries reacted to this situation? This all has to be ironed out. It has to be decided, not on an individual country basis, because we are a global economy. It has to be decided collectively. Is there a rebalancing And how does that rebalancing, how far does it go down? Does it mean that my home equity loan that I'm building houses with is forgiven? I don't think so. Does it mean that someone's student loan is forgiven? Does it mean that corporate debt is forgiven? I don't know. But all this has to be ironed out. And then, after that's ironed out, then we have to decide, how do we move forward? How do we make sure that this never happens again? How do we, I alluded in a previous video, what if it happens again and it happens in Paducah, Kentucky? And how do we make sure that we know it's in Paducah, Kentucky before it goes to Louisville, Kentucky and Lexington, Kentucky? How do we make sure it doesn't get out of Paducah? We have the technology to do that, particularly if, as I've done in my last video, build out 5G as a part of the reaction to this virus. I believe that's going to happen. But then, as some of you have wrote back to me, I don't want that invasion of my privacy. Do you want another 3 months of lockdown? What are you willing to give up in order to sacrifice your life or make your life potentially exterminated? I don't know. But these decisions are going to have to be made at a meeting like Bretton Woods. And you need to be aware that this meeting is going to happen. And then you need to read a second book. And I've, again, preached this. It's interesting. I can see how many people respond to my, you need to read the Big Nine, because my affiliate marketing comes back and says that 64 of you last month went and clicked on this link that's in my description, and yet 2 of you bought the book. This is something you also need to understand as an investor. 80% of the nations of the world's wealth is controlled by 5% of the population. That's the 2 people who went and bought the book. You have to separate yourself from the masses if you want to excel. That means not only watching videos and gleaning information, but expanding your mind and coming to a greater understanding of how the world evolved to where it is today, and who's going to be the players in the future of the world that just is going to change. This meeting in 1945 established the world order from 45 to 2020. This meeting that is going to happen in 2020 is going to establish the world order from 2020 through at least 2050, until the next World War IV happens, in whatever form it happens. So I, as an investor, have to sit down and look and say, okay, these minds are going to come together. What decisions are they going to make? I believe one of the decisions they're going to make is my house needs to become a smart home. I believe one of the decisions that they have to make is somehow they have to gather the data that has been accumulated by Apple, by Facebook, by Google, by Amazon, by IBM, and by Microsoft, and then by Tencent, Baidu, and Alibaba, and how that information and that data is going to be processed in such a way that it comes together for the benefit of civilization as a whole, so that we don't have a repeat of what we're going through. That's a given. in my mind. And again, if you read this, you will also come to the conclusion that with the use of big data and the gatherers of big data, artificial intelligence, machine learning, quantum computing, and smart homes, smart cars, smartphones, this is the direction we're going to go. So, as an investor, these are my investments. I also know that there are some small companies, and in my newsletter that I just sent out this morning, I did some research on one of those small companies. I'll do some more research and I'll do a video about them. They are a company who is going to write the software that takes all the data that the Big Nine have gathered and then brings it together and slices it and dices it and organizes it and then puts it back out for all of our benefit. They are a small San Francisco company. Those are the things, since I know there's going to be a world order meeting somewhere in the next 3 to 6 months, I don't really care what's said and what they decide because I already know what they have to do. So as an investor, I have to figure out who the players are going to be. Now, I know who's going to build out the 5G. We've talked about that. They're the people who are going to collect the construction fees. What I want is the people who are going to day by day by day monetize the ramifications of what we're living through today and will be the benefactors of this new world order for the next 50 years. Now, I won't live to see the end of that, but there's a good chance my grandchildren will, and maybe even, probably not my children. But this is where we're at. The other thing I think you ought to recognize and watch, I suspect this video will get in the next 30 days somewhere between 1,000 and 2,000 views. That means you're going to be one of 1,000 to 2,000 people who have a heads up before everybody else does. So take advantage of it. Share it with the people you love. Share it with even the people you like who have and want to gain access to those 5%ers or become one of those 5%ers who control 80% of the wealth in the world. Because the new wealth is about to happen. It's about to happen. The old wealth is going to go to the side. As I showed in my newsletter, there are a lot of the companies that you are very knowledgeable of that were part of the S&P 500, were part of the Nifty 50, were part of the people who got us to where we are now, who are in real jeopardy because they have not adapted and they have not built a strong balance sheet so they can make it through the next 3 to 6 months. This isn't going to happen. I am amazed that the early Dow is up 800 points this morning. And yet, it's recognized that we're going to have somewhere between 10 and 20% employment. It's also believed that we're going to have a V recovery, even though we have $1.2 trillion out of leveraged loans out there with corporations who are going to file bankruptcy. That 1.2 trillion in leverage loans compares to 1.3 trillion in bad mortgages in 2007, 2008. How can you expect this is going to be a V recovery? You know something I don't know. So, that's my cue for today. Recognize there's going to be a meeting and a new world order is going to be established. I believed that we were going to become isolationists, that can't happen now. That can't happen.